Every year, your paycheck buys a little less. But have you ever wondered why? Prices rise, savings shrink, and the world quietly adjusts like nothing happened. Yet behind this everyday reality lies a hidden mechanism older than nations, a force that toppled dynasties, bankrupted empires, and rewrote history. Today, we call it inflation, but ancient civilizations knew it by another name. They called it the silent thief, and it was feared more than war or famine, because inflation doesn't strike with armies or fire. It strikes your purchasing power, the value of your life hours. But here's the twist. Inflation isn't an accident. It was engineered, shaped, weaponized for centuries. And the truth behind it is far more dramatic than most imagine. To uncover it, we must go back. Far back. Back to the first economy that collapsed because money stopped meaning anything. And once you see what happened there, you'll recognize it happening again today. Our journey begins in ancient Babylon, where the world's first recorded inflation took root. Silver was the currency, stable, trusted, and heavy with meaning. But kings changed its purity, stretching the supply without mining more. A trick, a shortcut, a manipulation. Suddenly the same coin bought less grain, less oil, less everything. Ordinary people didn't understand what happened, only that life got harder. The wealthy stayed wealthy, the poor became poorer, and the rulers blamed bad harvests, a lie repeated for centuries. But here's the shocking part. Every inflation crisis in history begins with a change in money itself. Every empire believed it could outsmart economics. Every empire learned the same painful lesson. But Babylon's mistake was just the beginning, because the next inflation disaster would shake the world's greatest superpower. Rome's currency, the denarius, was once pure and strong, but funding armies and expansion required endless money, so emperors simply reduced the silver content, again and again. The people didn't notice at first, but slowly, bread cost more, wine cost more, everything cost more, until the denarius became almost worthless. Sound familiar? This wasn't mere economic failure, it was national identity collapse. Soldiers demanded real silver, not Rome's fake currency. Trade partners refused Roman coins. Inflation didn't just raise prices, it dismantled trust. And when trust dies, currency dies. And when currency dies, empires follow. Rome didn't fall overnight. It inflated itself into weakness. And what replaced it was a world of chaos, eerily similar to what we see today. Long before Europe understood money, China invented paper currency. Lightweight, efficient, and revolutionary, until temptation arrived. Just print more, a phrase that has destroyed more economies than war. The Song dynasty printed paper notes to fund armies and government spending, then printed more, then more, until prices spiraled out of control. Inflation exceeded anything the ancient world had seen. People hoarded goods, not money. Merchants refused paper notes, and trust dissolved into panic. History books blame invaders for China's collapse, but the truth is simpler. They printed themselves into vulnerability, a pattern we'll see again in a far more modern world. In medieval Europe, inflation didn't come from printing, but from scarcity. Gold mines dried up, silver veins dwindled, and coin supply froze. With fewer coins, each one became more valuable. That sounds good, right? Wrong. It strangled economies. Prices fell, wages collapsed, businesses died, the economy suffocated, and kings tried a desperate fix, cutting coins thinner. More coins from the same gold, a sleight of hand that fooled no one. Trust evaporated again. People reverted to bartering to survive. The economy moved backward by centuries. Here's the twist. Inflation isn't always rising prices. It's instability, and instability always punishes the poor first. As kingdoms realized money could break empires, a new idea was born. What if money had managers? Thus emerged the world's first central banks, designed to stabilize economies, but quietly shaped to benefit rulers. They controlled supply, interest, and trust. And with that power came manipulation. Monarchs pressured banks to create more money. Wars demanded funding. Banks obliged. Prices rose. People blamed merchants. Banks escaped blame, a trend that continues today. This was the beginning of inflation as policy. Not accident, not misfortune. Policy. A tool. And once unleashed, it transformed nations forever. During the Napoleonic Wars, Britain faced financial collapse. But instead of admitting defeat, they suspended gold convertibility, meaning paper money no longer tied to gold. They printed freely to fund war. Inflation surged, but Britain survived, because the enemy collapsed first. Money became a weapon, inflation became strategy, and victory justified the means. But what happens when nations use inflation not for war, but for political convenience? What happens when inflation becomes normal? Britain found out after the war. Prices soared, wages couldn't keep up, and ordinary citizens paid the price for victory. The U.S. experienced major inflation during the Civil War. Greenbacks were issued, paper money printed without gold backing. Prices doubled. Soldiers were paid in currency that lost value every month. After the war, stability returned, but a dangerous idea remained. America realized printing could solve short-term crises, and when a tool works once, governments reuse it. Again and again. Inflation became America's hidden tax, silent, invisible, but always paid by the working class. The stage was set for the biggest monetary shift in modern history, a shift that changed every dollar in your wallet. By the 20th century, global currencies were tied to gold. You could exchange paper notes for real metal, a system built on trust and discipline. But wars drained treasuries. Governments cheated. They printed more notes than they had gold. Confidence eroded. Nations panicked. And slowly, one by one, they abandoned gold. Inflation surged worldwide, yet politicians pointed fingers elsewhere. Supply issues, labor costs, never themselves, and the world marched toward a monetary cliff, without realizing it was only a few decades away. In 1971, the world woke up to a quiet announcement. President Nixon temporarily suspended gold convertibility. Temporary, that lasted forever. The dollar was no longer tied to anything real. It became a promise backed by trust alone. Inflation exploded. Oil prices quadrupled. Jobs vanished as costs soared. The U.S. entered one of its worst economic periods. But for governments, it was the beginning of unlimited power. Print money? Easy. Borrow more? Why not? Debt became infinite, and inflation became permanent. This single event changed the price of everything you buy today. After 1971, nations embraced debt like oxygen. Governments borrowed to fund programs, wars, and promises. Central banks printed to keep economies stable. Inflation became slow, steady, almost invisible, a creeping erosion of wealth. You didn't notice it daily, but over decades, it hollowed out savings. $1 in 1970 buys almost nothing today. Inflation became a feature, not a bug. 2% per year, they said, seems harmless, until you compound it across 40 years. It's not harmless. It's devastating. And most people still don't realize what caused it. But you're about to. Inflation works like a silent tax. It doesn't appear on your pay stubs. It doesn't show up on your bank statements. But every year, it takes a slice of your life. A little less purchasing power, a little more struggle, a little more pressure. Your money erodes, slowly, invisibly, and companies raise prices to survive. Meanwhile, wages lag behind. The rich protect themselves with assets. The poor pay with time. Inflation is not just economics, it's inequality, and the story is about to take an even darker turn. When inflation spins out of control, currency becomes meaningless. Germany, 1923, wheelbarrows of cash for a loaf of bread. Zimbabwe, 2008, trillion-dollar bills. Venezuela, 2019, salaries evaporated overnight. In every case, governments insisted everything is fine, until it wasn't. Money died completely. People reverted to bartering. Savings vanished. Life collapsed. Hyperinflation isn't rare. It's a repeating cycle, a predictable consequence of irresponsible money creation. The question is, could this happen again on a global scale? For the first time in history, every major country uses paper money with no backing. Debt has exploded beyond imagination. Governments print trillions with the click of a button. Central banks manipulate rates like puppet strings. Inflation doesn't need war anymore. It only needs policy. Prices rise everywhere. Food, energy, housing. Wages can't keep up. People feel poorer, even when they earn more. This isn't coincidence. It's the design of our financial system, a system built on inflation. A system that requires prices to rise forever. But infinite inflation has a limit, and that limit is approaching. Today, inflation is hidden in every aspect of life. Shrinkflation, smaller portions, same price. Skimpflation, worse quality, same price. Service fees everywhere. Subscriptions replacing ownership. Every trick reduces your real value. Every trick boosts corporate margins. People feel poorer but can't explain why. They blame themselves. But the truth is structural. Inflation is engineered into the system, and you are not meant to escape it, unless you understand the mechanism behind it. And that's what we uncover next. The real reason inflation exists at all. Inflation is not a bug, it's a feature. Governments rely on rising prices to make debt cheaper over time. If money loses value, debt becomes easier to repay. So inflation helps governments, but hurts citizens. It redistributes wealth upward. Tax brackets swell with phantom income. Savings lose value silently. Inflation is the state's greatest tool. And modern governments mastered it. They can't afford stable money. Stable money limits spending. Stable money limits power. Inflation unites politics and economics into one machine, a machine that feeds on purchasing power. And you are the fuel. Central banks claim to fight inflation, but their tools often create more of it. Low interest rates encourage borrowing. Borrowing increases money supply. Result? Higher prices. High rates slow inflation, but crash markets. It's a delicate balance based on perception. Central banks manage expectations as much as reality. They create confidence with words, not actions, because the system is too fragile for honesty, too indebted for stability, too interconnected for failure. Inflation is no longer accidental. It is engineered, and it shapes your life more than any law or policy. The next chapter of inflation won't involve printing presses. It will involve digital money. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are coming. Programmable money with expiration dates, unlimited control over spending, real-time taxation, and the potential for higher inflation without physical limits. CBDCs will allow governments to manipulate money instantly, adjust supply daily, stimulate or suppress sectors instantly. Inflation could become algorithmic, a digital lever pulled by unseen hands. Convenience will hide the danger until it's too late. This is where the future of inflation truly begins. In every era, people found ways to protect themselves. The wealthy bought assets, land, metals, businesses. Ordinary people saved in goods that held value. Today, the same rules apply. Assets rise with inflation. Cash loses value. Financial literacy becomes survival. Understanding money becomes self-defense. Savings must be strategic. Spending must be intentional. Debt must be controlled. Inflation punishes the unaware, but rewards the informed. You're learning the truth most never will, and that truth is power. Inflation has shaped civilizations for 5,000 years. It built empires, broke kingdoms, and crushed ordinary lives. It is the quiet force behind the world economy, and it never stops. Because money is a story, and those who control the story control everything. Inflation persists because it benefits the powerful, but understanding it benefits you. Knowledge is the only shield against the silent thief, because once you see inflation for what it truly is, you'll never see prices the same way again. You'll never hear political promises the same way again. And you'll never misunderstand your paycheck again. This is the hidden history of inflation. And now, you know the truth.